Well, good morning. Welcome to our second session today, your second session, today. Now representing myself directly, Sun King. And I want to speak a little bit today with you about a very important point. It's captured in a phrase that was actually from a literary source, Milan Kundera's book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. The thing that is so difficult for many of you who would choose to fulfill your function as a portal through which this energetic power that I represent as Sun King, it's very challenging. Especially because most body and person that become willing haven't necessarily had as much preparation. Remember what I had shared through Louis before, the process of genius, the process of expression, high-level expression, takes these 4 stages: preparation, incubation, illumination, and expression. And the preparation would obviously be the most difficult. So in my process of grooming Louis for his function, it was a long and often difficult process, and I can detail more of that as we go along, but it's very challenging for the person, body, device to become empty enough. And I know this is what Louis shared a lot about, his process of repeated devastations, which of course orchestrated by me for his benefit or my benefit, for him to become a useful channel, portal, conduit. It was necessary that he would eliminate as much of the interference patterns as possible. Some interference patterns are tribal. So I basically arranged with his soul to incarnate into a family that would totally abandon and betray him. So he didn't have that much of that tribal interference pattern that many have. Many can't choose to fully fulfill their function because of tribal concerns. So I think by the time Louis received his initial download, big download, I mean, there were a few earlier. I started in his teens, but but the big download came when he was 22. And, again, it was very difficult for him because of his egoic structure to deal with this information. He, like most, misunderstood the function, somehow taking it personally. And this is again what the ego would do, would interpret this energetic call as something personal, because that's what a person does. Ego represents the person. So along the way, Louis struggled greatly trying to assimilate this function, this destiny, and describing again the unbearable lightness of being that many, Louis, like many before him, would almost seemingly choose to destroy himself rather than fulfill this function because it seems so impossible. Again, this lightness of being that I represent is unbearable, okay, to the body, the person. We saw this represented quite some time ago in the form of Jesus, that he could only manage to stay on the planet 33 years because it was so unbearable, if not for him, for those around him. Okay. The times were very dense then, and so he had to be crucified. He had to be, well, and again, the whole story of him being martyred, whether that was true or not, I'm not so sure. You've certainly misinterpreted much of what he represented, because really the crucifixion was not the point. The point was the resurrection, to basically show that there is no death at this level that I'm speaking from. Of course, there is no death. It represents the eternal. So this is part of what initially I came to Louis to offer instruction. And I remember one kind of cute story, because I basically was giving him this information that, you are invincible, you are indestructible. Of course, I wasn't really meaning you, the person. What I was really pointing toward, and the voice always points toward the reality, which again is not the person, the body. But of course, the body, the person, would interpret it that way. So I remember as a teenager feeding this information, he got this idea that, wow, his family went skiing all the time in Vermont. And he had this idea that I can't be hurt. I'm invincible. So I can take these new skis that I bought. He bought a pair of Hart Javelin skis that were one of the first metal fiberglass hybrid skis guaranteed for life against breakage. And so he had this crazy idea that he would crank his bindings down super tight, so when he had a fall, the skis wouldn't come off. This is the days before the brakes that would stop a ski from running away, before even they had the straps to tie the skis to the boot. Anyway, the point is he was tempted, okay, to try this idea, to explore this possibility that he was indestructible. So he would go up the lift line a little further each time and then bomb straight down until he had a great crash. The skis not coming off. So eventually what happened in one of these crashes, a very violent crash, he actually flipped and both tips of the skis went into the snow and both of the skis snapped or they broke. Instead of his legs breaking, his legs should have broken. Well, guess what? This is kind of the fun story from my perspective of me on several occasions protecting him, right? What people will call like a miracle is simply protection from the higher self that would stop his legs from breaking, allow the skis to break, the whole thing be orchestrated, again, as a demonstration. Okay, and he's 14, 15 years old. I remember just sticking with the same subject. He went on a ski trip to Jackson Hole, Wyoming in his senior year of high school. So he was 17. And he had his new Hart Javelin skis, of course, that he'd gotten as a result of breaking the other pair. So he went with two buddies, and the two buddies were more or less intermediate skiers, and they wanted to stay in the easier area. And Louis was quite accomplished. So he went off on his own, and he went up on the main mountain, the big mountain, up the tram. And there was a section, they were getting a lot of snow up on the top of the mountain, and they would periodically rope off sections because of avalanche danger. And then they had teams of people that would shoot guns into the avalanches to detonate like a small bomb that would release the avalanche and take away the danger. Anyway, there had just been a very heavy snow, and an area had not been yet treated with these explosives, so it was still roped off danger, do not enter, avalanche danger. And so again, because Louis had this screw loose in his brain because of my influence, he said, well, I'll just go through the line. He's by himself in deep powder, going into an avalanche area. And of course, I'm watching him going, okay, here we go. So I trigger the avalanche, but it only goes a few meters, and I stop it just to, anyway, it was the first devastation that I helped orchestrate for him was filling him probably as a 14, 15-year-old with this idea that he might want to become an Air Force pilot like his father. And so he applied and was accepted at the Air Force Academy. And so this was the first devastation to send him there, totally out of his league, 17 years old, and showing up at this military academy where the whole point was they were going to make you or they were going to break you. And of course, in Louis' case, they broke him. And you know, that first summer, again, with me observing, he, you know, going through survival training, he had to do boxing and wrestling and intramurals. They had to do Army games, and he was a mess. But the worst part was when the academic year started and he was actually comfortable in that environment. But he something had to shift in his brain, right? Because that was not his destiny to become an Air Force fighter pilot. So I remember when he came back home to visit for the first time at Christmas break, he spent time with his little sister, and she was a little hippie girl, and smoking marijuana and hanging out with other druggies. And Louis thought his sister was going off the deep end. Couldn't understand her at all. Why would she be acting this way, doing these things, smoking marijuana, and probably other drugs as well? Anyway, there was something in his brain that had to shift, right? He was not going to become a military man. He had other things to do with his life. So flipped a little switch in his brain. By the end of that 10 days, he was smoking marijuana with his sister. He thought the military was crazy. He went back to the school and got into a series of he just kind of refused to comply with the military rules, and he got in increasing levels of trouble and ended up getting expelled at the end of his first year. So again, guiding it's so fascinating, and from my perspective, seeing because what I see representing the eternal, the whole point was Louis sitting here, his body and person sitting here, being more or less a perfect vehicle for me, because I destroyed all of his interference patterns. He was destroyed at the tribal level, destroyed at the egoic level.